Hello and welcome back to another episode of Everything Meta. And today we have once again, Peyote is going to tell us everything he knows about everything. Welcome back.
Hey,
Hey, it's early for him. We're gonna get him up to speed. He again has no idea the specifics, what today's topic is, but we're generally going to talk about science DAO. Before we do that, I want to point out what listening to the Twitter space. If you're new and you came to the Twitter space, not the most recent one, because at the time of this recording, the most recent one was just last night, and we haven't had a chance to discuss that. But the one from last week, this is what some of what you would have heard.
we've begun development on our platform, the overall DAO UI, as well as the investment interface. Pretty exciting. We managed to save a fair amount of money there, which is pretty cool from going with one of our usual development firms. So we'll be able to utilize some of the treasury to do some other things at the same time, which is awesome because everybody likes saving money, right? So that is underway as we speak. Timeline on that is probably about 5 weeks. Expect around the 10th of August to be fully complete. What we're modeling after is seedinvest.com. Guys have ever seen. I really think they have a clean a clean UI where they're able to put various startups up for the general public to find or contribute to investment wise. So really like that platform. So if you guys can kind of think like a little blurb for the future, like a quick description of the overall project, think like the seed invest or the fundrise for scientific startups. We're very close to getting a final term sheet done before presenting to the overall DAO for the AI data aggregate for the arbitrage bot. So we are building an arbitrage bot to find arbitrage trading opportunities across DeFi, whether it's on Binance Smart Chain or multiple centralized exchanges. This program will be gathering most of the data to continue on with the AI ML build, right, and future development. So pretty exciting there. So we'll be able to utilize our treasury as well as people holding the Theory token that are part of the DAO. We'll be able to utilize this arbitrage bot as well. I think if we're able to finally get the terms down, run it through the DAO, we should be able to move forward and maybe have a prototype that people can potentially interact with within about 5 weeks. So similar time frame, which is pretty exciting as well.
All right. Here's my question. If you never had any experience with any of the things that you were saying and you were new to the space, what is going on? So we're going to start from the beginning for someone who's totally ignorant about the space, who might be interested if only they knew what in the world was going on in this Twitter space, right? What is a DAO?
Oh goodness. Well, 1 second. I feel like I have to change my voice a little bit. You know when you hear yourself when you're recording? Why do I sound so lazy? I sound like a lazy person. What is a DAO? A DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization.
Right.
It's supposed to be a way that some type of organization can have decentralized governance, which basically just means like democratic governance. However, a DAO can also be a computer program, right, that governs itself based on a specific set of rules, right? The way that we do it, I think, is like a little bit different. I don't know if it's like a bastardized version of a DAO or if it just has more of a human element integrated into it. Like with what we do, human beings are essentially the smart contract, right? Which obviously there's flaws and so on and so forth, but like there could be a a completely autonomous, decision making situation built inside of a computer program that could essentially give follow certain rules to govern its protocol, and that can be a DAO as well, right?
And what then is DeSci?
Oh goodness, I mean, DeSci could be a number of different things, right? So I think for us, let me think just for a second before I just start
Take your time.
spewing. I usually just spew, and it turns out okay. Here you go. Well, okay, so this is tough because I'm not, a scientist, right? Like, so it's gonna be hard to speak for everybody, and there's a lot better, smarter people that can describe DeSci better. However, from my perspective, there's many areas that you can apply decentralized governance, this decentralized decision making, decentralized grading onto people, from anything from reputation, right? Like scientific reputation, whether it's there's this thing called an H score, which is like sort of comprised of how many times your peer-reviewed articles are cited.
Right.
Like how many people are using your research pushes your H score up. I think there's a way to make that like decentralized, if it even needs to. Publications, right? Publications, I think could benefit from being a bit more decentralized, because it costs a lot of money for a research lab to publish their research and have peer reviewed situations to double check their work. But also there's an issue, I think, in science as well, where you just have your friends basically peer review and also cite your work, right? So if you're inside of a community and you're like, hey buddy, like, I'll cite your work in a peer-reviewed article if you cite my work in a peer-reviewed article, right? And so it's not super decentralized. It's more of like a click, kind of like a click. So there's stuff like that. And then also data, over the last several tens of years, people, man, when you're talking about like genetic sequencing or something, it's huge data. It's like, yeah, people think like, okay, this is like science and this is so on and so forth, like it's scientific and genetics, gene editing, whatever it might be, but actually in reality, I mean, it is. However, it's heavily software oriented and requires massive amounts of data. If you can imagine, if you were to like expand on a file, like imagine you put like all of the information needed to complete genetic sequencing and potentially edit some type of some genes in a single human being, and then you're able to expand that file. It's a massive file, right? And so the need for big data involvement in a lot of scientific research is also there. And so I think decentralized data as well has always been a pretty hip theme over the last however many years. For us, okay, and this is, I know I'm rambling, for us, decentralized funding for science, I personally think is very important. Reason being, for instance, we have Dr. Mo and Dr. Haume working on a project. It's a cure for type 1 diabetes, right? Utilizing CAR T cell treatment.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult. Like right now, the market is looking fairly shaky
right? The market is looking fairly shaky. The venture firms could be closing, not necessarily closing, but not accepting new investments or new proposals for a number of years until the market, stabilizes or whatever it is, maybe a couple of years. Something as complex as what they're working on is also hard to complete due diligence on and see if it is commercially viable. It sounds like it, right? It sounds extremely disruptive, but like, when something is so specialized, how is a singular investor supposed to know, like, oh yeah, this has a path forward to commercialization, right? Because that decision making and that due diligence is put on just a single person, right? And they might be able to do it. They might be the expert. They might be the person to be like, that's a good one. That's a bad one. This is a good one. They might be that person. However, I think that if we spread that due diligence process amongst thousands of people, right, then we can come to a collective decision, which is we'll have a more crystallized perspective based on the views of many on whether something is good or not. And then also some things are not necessarily like investable, right? But they're like donatable. They might not be commercially viable, but they deserve to have their projects funded and complete. And if you have thousands of people together that are that are the decision making process for whether something receives a grant or funds or whatever, I mean, they can choose, be like, yeah, we want to put in $100 per person, for this one proposal, even though it's never going to be commercially viable, it's never going to make money, whatever it is. Whereas some people, when they're managing their funds, obviously they're professional managers of funds, and their purpose, right, for managing those funds is to make profit, turn that money into more money. Whereas if it was 1,000 people, like, you could essentially just donate if you wanted to, to something, right? So it takes the burden, it takes like the decision burden as well as like the funding, like that burden off of a single person. And that's why we think decentralized governance and funding for science as well is super important.
Paotic, you mentioned Dr. Mo. I want to play a clip from so that people who are not so familiar can know a little bit more about that project.
Dr. Mo has been posting many updates inside of the Science DAO community chat on the project that they're working on. It looks like they got some pretty amazing PR over the last few weeks from endocrine.org. I think down in Florida, is where you guys went down to?
No, it was in Atlanta.
In Atlanta, okay. Yeah. And it seems like many of the breakthroughs were publicized at that time, which is going to be really helpful for future raises as well.
Thank you for inviting me again. And we were working on a potential treatment for type 1 diabetes. And this treatment started by testing it on our humanized mice that we utilized and embedded human genes responsible for type 1 diabetes in their genome, and they've been multiplying. And we after they get type 1 diabetes, we tested our Treg cells treatment into them, and it was 100% successful. And in the past few months, we've been testing it on live human cells as well. And it was very successful and very promising results, even caught the eyes of the Endocrine Society in the United States. And they invited us to be speakers in the research news conference, and everybody really liked it, and it was picked up by the news as well. Yeah. So
with that said, how does this research maybe not get funded, but for an organization like the Science DAO?
Oh, something on this level, it generally can find some pretty interested parties, right? But there's a few ways, right? Like there's always there's when you have something like a cure for type 1 diabetes, right? You look at the market. What is the market? It's the diabetes treatment industry accounts for 2% of global GDP, right? It's a $1 trillion industry. And this is for insulin monitoring devices and downstream treatments, right? Like further treatments, like, amputations of limbs, so, so on and so forth, right? Like it can be very bad, as it's a bad disease, right? And
sure,
the people that would potentially shelve a patent like this, right, are people that if it's 100% legit and it cures diabetes, that disrupts trillions of dollars in revenue.
Sure.
Right. Sure. And if you were like manufacturing insulin, right, if you had a monopoly, or if you controlled the cash flow from insulin, right, and that was your source of revenue, and here comes Dr. Jaume and Dr. Mo, and boom, they stop all your revenue, right?
Absolutely.
Like, yeah, you would not want that to happen. That's 2% of global GDP, right? And so you can maybe imagine a little bit like who would not want this sort of thing. Like, and it's crazy to think, right? Because it's a cure for a disease. You think, oh, everybody would be cheering it on,
right?
Right? Wouldn't everybody?
Not so
much. Yeah, but it in reality, it's a, I don't know if I've watched too many movies, but yeah, that sort of thing does happen, buyouts, takeovers, right, of
Sure.
other companies to stop progress in certain things. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really amazing thing that they're doing. We're super lucky to have Dr. Mo and Dr. Jaume involved in the Science DAO as advisors, right? Which is really amazing. And then we always have Dr. Mo. He's so generous with his time and his knowledge, sharing it with everybody in the DAO and whatnot. He's just become like kind of a key figure in the ecosystem. Always available. So,
excuse me. So I agree with you that there's often more money in the treatment than there is in the cure, right? And so people are more inclined to want to prolong the treatment in order for the financial gain, as opposed to the betterment of society and the actual improvement or solution to the problem.
yeah.
Are there disadvantages, in your opinion, from maybe circumventing the traditional scientific peer review long process?
Oh, they're not circumventing anything. Like the company Adopt Cell, they're not circumventing anything. We're just a very quick so like I think the one thing that a company, and this is for the companies out there that might be seeking funding, and why we're competitive, I think, is that, with other VC firms,
Sure.
we're like super fast. You know what I mean? If you can have a clear pitch, and people can understand what's going on, and you can illustrate a path forward for, say, 1,000 people, and that's something that we can help with as well.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes people are able to make a decision on something within minutes,
Right.
And if it's because we're distributing the burden over 1,000 people, right? It's not saying like, oh, like, yes, I need to put in $4 million into the seed stage, right? It can be something like much less. Like, does somebody in the DAO want to put in 40,000, right?
Mhm.
Does somebody in the DAO want to put in 1,000? Does so on and so forth, and you can sort of aggregate that funding based on people's desire and their attachment or their affinity with any particular project, right? So
yeah, maybe I should to be very mindful with my words. What I want to say is there may be a perception problem. So regardless of what side anybody may be on, in the last couple of years, we saw this, for instance, with COVID vaccine, right? Part of the perception was this happens way too fast. I don't know if I could trust it because it happened quickly, right? And we're used to a slower kind of methodical process, and we assume that sometimes slow equals better. So what I'm asking then is, do you think that there could be a perception problem if we're able to figure out how to solve things that typically take a very long time in a short period of time? Like that maybe the very people we're trying to help might be disadvantaged by the fact that they got their funding too quickly in a system that's used to relying on its antiquated process.
I don't think so. I think the CEO of like a biotech company, especially if they have a track record or if they've taken a company public before and they know the steps, if you give them the means that they are seeking, right, they'll take the ball and run. It's waiting for a fund for like a quarter of a year sometimes, right, or maybe longer, to close a deal and see how it fits in with their program. That's always going to be kind of a tough part, right? Whereas with us, I think that we can come to decision. I mean, we've raised over $1 million in like 48 hours, So you put it out there and gauge what people are thinking, what they're feeling, and if they like it, they'll run with it. I will say that we are an alternative type of funding source, and depending on a particular scientist's reputation, who the funds are always available to them. Will the science DAO harm their reputation because it is alternative? They're getting money. It's like, will people view it as like, oh, they can't get money from somewhere else? Or are they also in the spirit of like decentralized science and decentralized finance and collective decision making, right, as opposed to the decision making of just a few people, right? So that's that's sort of what I think being alternative might be difficult for some, but I think that we've assembled a pretty decent team, advisory panel, so on and so forth. So like, we're so lucky that when we sit down with a company out there, it's like people know. I think they know that our group is very legitimate, and in some cases, like, so most of the time I'm probably the most I am like maybe the most inexperienced person in the meeting, with dealing with different cap tables and fundraise everything. Like, I've raised a ton of money over my little career, but yeah, it's Like the other day, we're in a meeting and there's 3 VCs,
Mm.
and here we are. We're the science DAO, with the purple rocket ship. And,
Yeah.
having to explain to a company or other investors at the table, like how the science DAO, representing potentially like 1,000 people would look on their cap table, right? And so that's sort of the thing.
So describe the process. Someone wants to be a part of this science style so that they can be part of maybe some small part of helping to change to improve medical health or some other contribution to science just through their financial contribution. How does one do that?
Oh gosh, you just get into the community, go to the website, get into either the Telegram or the Discord, and start asking questions and get involved. And then somebody from the DAO will be able to assist them. It's a super friendly community. Everybody's very helpful. If you're there to participate in something, I mean, that's really the goal. There's a number of reasons. There's a number of reasons to want to.
Sure.
For instance, when we launched the science DAO, the crypto market was like, what's the word? It's down like 80%, 70% from where it was.
When 80 to 90, I think at the time.
Okay, from where it was when we launched. However, like 2.5x or something, right? Like, so obviously there's some people buy the top or the DC. I don't know when people enter. Okay, like it's always it's chaos. You know what I mean? It's always a bit of chaos, dude.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's no making sense of it sometimes, man. But the part that we can sort of control, right? Everybody's doing well, right? And they're doing all right. I think what we tried to show and what we're trying to prove and what we're trying to offer to the overall public, right, is you have cryptocurrency, you have value. Some people have most of their net worth in cryptocurrency, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's like, most of their net worth. If they attach, like, let's say the ETH is going down, right? Stablecoin is going sideways, but one tiny little scientific startup is mooning, right? Can we attach our cryptocurrency into that small scientific startup to follow the trajectory, the growth trajectory of that scientific that company, right? That individual company, as opposed to the overall market, right? And that's how you do it plenty of times. It's just sometimes the underlying currency of certain things, like with NFTs, like you could put your money in JPEG NFTs and the floor price can go up over time, maybe while ETH is going down, right? What we've seen is the floor price of the Bored Apes, right, is about the same amount of ETH as it was before. It's just ETH is now, well, it's over 1,200 right now, but
yeah,
for a second there, went from 250,000, for 1,000 ETH, $2,500 per ETH or something, down to 1,000, right? And so that your Bored Ape JPEG is fluctuating by over $100,000, right? Whereas evaluation, on paper valuation, peer-reviewed valuation, collectively came to valuation is I mean, it's pretty black and white, right? It's not going to have a ton of fluctuation unless something bad happens and it goes down, or the lab, the whatever it is, reaches a new milestone, right, and it goes up. And in some cases, and I think this is what's really cool, is maybe a particular company, I'll just give you a scenario, right? Maybe a particular company is making a raise at like a $10 million post money valuation or something, right? And they're moving through some type of application. They have some positive research, right? Once they get their application in and it's approved, boom, it's $100 million valuation, right? Biotech, little trickery or something, right? And then boom, they're raising money with a $100 million valuation. They're at a stage where a big fund is coming in. They need $50 million, right? Let's say they need 50 million now. Then they raise that 50 million. Boom, their new valuation is 150 million, right? And so your involvement at that early stage, at that $10 million valuation or whatever it is, right? Just 15x based on their progress and also the additional money that they brought into their company, right? So it's more complicated. It's more complicated than that, but there is a way to have the NFT value track the on paper or peer reviewed or whatever valuation of a specific company, and have like a pre-IPO type order book for NFTs and whatnot, right? So it is an investment. That's a lot of things that people can't say, but with the right exemptions and following regulation and whatnot, you can offer investments and have people. And the coolest thing is, like, you can use your ETH. It's like, who knows, you can strategize around this. Maybe you see a particular company that you think is going to 10x over the next like 8 months or so, right? Can you look at some type of shit coin out there and be like, yeah, that's gonna 10x over the next 8 months? No, it'll probably go like 1,000,000x in like 5 hours and then fall down to the Earth's core. Like who knows what's gonna happen? But you can't buy like $10,000 of it and be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna 10x $10,000, right? You're gonna buy like $300 and it's gonna go all over the place. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like and then having like peer reviewed analysis, sort of, right, or advisory panel with that's not able to say like, oh yeah, this is gonna 10x or whatever, but they can give you a good perspective on if it's investable. Like if it's coming to the table, it's obviously something that other people are interested in contributing to, right? So
for sure. Will you explain, though, for those who are not aware, the NFT, first of all, for those who are super new, what is an NFT?
Oh, it's a token. It's a different type of token. That's essentially a proof of ownership smart contract. Yeah. If you own the token, whatever the token is attached to or represents based on the legalese or the language inside the smart contract, right? Like in the token, in the smart contract, it can say like, you own this many watermelons.
Right.
You know what I mean? And boom, you have that token, and that's like a certificate of ownership, essentially.
Now explain how that would work inside of the science DAO.
Oh, well, there's a ton of different ways it could work inside of the science DAO, but basically like that ownership smart contract could say like, in the legalese, I mean, it could say anything, right? It could say like, you were part of the crypto facing science DAO effort to raise this much money for this company in exchange for this particular interest, and it's worth this much on the at this time or something like that, right? Some type of receipt, right? A certificate of doing, which could be transferable, potentially in the future for stock, for whatever, right? So it's there's a lot. This is something that I rely heavily on D for. So so you can handle, but that's pretty much I mean, that's something that you can utilize NFTs for. It's not they're called non-fungible tokens, but you can have non-fungible shares, so you can divvy up pre-IPO, like private company equity, and divvy them up via proof of ownership tokens, like sort of a stock certificate, right, on blockchain. With the science DAO, it's going to be a little bit more complicated, right? Because like a private company does not want to see like 1,000 people on their cap table, or 10,000 people on their cap table, and be like, we have to report to 10,000 shareholders all of a sudden. You know what I mean? That'd be tough. And so what the science DAO is trying to do is create that crypto facing and company facing side, where it is essentially managing that relationship for its members, right? So like the DAO would manage the relationship, the involvement, right, for say 10,000 DAO members, and the company can raise money from those 10,000 people, right, without and tap into cryptocurrency value, which there's $1 trillion in cryptocurrency value, right? And people that are readily spend, like what they're doing is investing. For private companies, you're essentially you're accessing millions of people that are actively investing in things. They're looking for things to put their cryptocurrency in. That's what they're doing, right?
Gambling.
Yeah, gambling. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so it's pretty much in case we use this video for anything, like putting it on the science website or something, he's referring to what I previously thought the only use case for crypto was, and why we're trying to do things that steer away from gambling and speculative investing.
I do not mean to suggest that in this case we're talking about gambling. I am making a reference to a previous statement.
Previous video. Yeah. So yeah, that's essentially the function of the science DAO, right? Is to have a investor in crypto facing sort of marketing and aggregate for bringing more cryptocurrency value into any particular company that it is looking, that's looking to raise money, and then also create that liaison information access type porthole and platform, so that company and the general public can be involved in a private effort to complete science, and so.
And what are the additional, so there's the funding piece, which is obviously critical. Do you think, can you name just what you think may be any other advantages to the scientific community, or advantages to persons who otherwise wouldn't get to participate in this aspect of funding? So like, take away the funding side, because we recognize how important funding is, and to an extent, then we also recognize, like you said, people are looking for investment vehicles. These are seemingly more less volatile than random crypto projects, right? So aside from that, are there any other advantages that you think are on either side?
Yes. So we're working on our publication.
Yeah.
Right. So you're working on that publication. I think that decentralized information aggregate for science, I think is super important, right? So that way, like all the info and reviewed papers are not funneling through the same exact publications over and over again that charge however much money they charge, right? But we can get the information potentially out to the same amount of people in a completely different way. So that is, I think, is super important. We also have one of our lead for game development, Farouk, is building quizzes and educational type of play within the right. So I think that if there's anybody out there that wants to get involved in overall education and the spreading of knowledge, they can be involved in a decentralized way. Like I think the quiz questions came from the DAO. It didn't come from a single person. And so like, a lot of times you have this and this as well as anybody, I think, when you get a book, right, like a textbook in school, it's written by somebody, right? There's an author. Sometimes it's an organization that is the author, but generally, especially like history and stuff, it comes from a perspective, based on their knowledge base and everything they've studied over time. But it's always going to be a perspective, whereas like information to be truly proper should probably come from multiple perspectives, right? And so creating that, whether it's a science DAO textbook, for schools, so on and so forth, whether it's for science, whether it's for history, any type of education, even could be like finance. Like how does the science DAO, come on, bro, can the science DAO make a textbook, okay, for AP US history?
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
Right. And can it, based on the people inside of the DAO and the credentials, can it be a legitimate textbook? Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can the DAO convince a particular school system to adopt the science DAO's textbook?
Now, I think, can it happen? Absolutely. I don't want to take anything away from it. I think to your same point from earlier with regard to cure versus the treatment, that would be where the resistance will come from. Like, are you going to put McGraw-Hill out of business? Or like, I don't know, like the fight of and maybe the extent to which the powerhouses in academic publishing may be willing to just offer up free materials for the foreseeable future, just to be competitive, or to kind of put some other business out of business in that way. I don't know, but yeah, I think it absolutely can happen, but it would be an uphill battle for sure.
Yeah, I mean, they're moving to what? So what do we have to do? We have to recruit teachers.
Yeah.
Right. We recruit the teachers, and then the teachers are like, I want to teach this curriculum because they help develop it. Right?
Yeah.
So there is a path. You see what I'm saying? Like there is a path with the science DAO to disrupt like everything, about academia, and it's possible. And so that is the direction. I mean, it's a long path forward. And the coolest part about it is you, sir, can propose that we're going to make a 9th grade US history textbook and put it on on an app, so that the kids that are now using iPads or whatever can use that textbook. And you need to raise this much money to have an aggregate of this much information to build this textbook. And the DAO, you need 10 people from the DAO to essentially call every school district and have them onboard this textbook and use it, because it has these advantages, right? It's made by many, not by one, so on and so forth, right? Right? You see what I'm saying? So you could propose that, and yes, there is massive amounts of money in academic, textbooks. I know somebody was doing finishing up some college, and they paid like hundreds of dollars for like this one textbook, right? Or something, like over $100 for this one textbook. It got mailed.
Probably used, yeah.
Well, no, bro, worse. It got mailed to their house, and it was just a QR code to download it.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Bro, like these people are trying to learn. Like they can, why are you trying to? They're like, don't go work, right? Because they're trying to learn, or they're working and they're trying to learn at the same time. And there's so many studies done. Man, it's this is like one of the cases for UBI, right? Universal basic income, is that when somebody does not have the stress of an unpaid bill, right? Like some type of obligation. It could be unpaid bill or just like it doesn't have to be financial, I suppose, but some type of obligation. Their decision making capabilities they go down, they turn bearish, right? Like they've done these studies where people's IQ, once all of their bills are paid, their ability to make decisions, so on and so forth, it is I don't have a specific study to quote right now, so just in case I'm just saying shit.
Couple guys talking. Yeah, go.
Yeah. But I saw one time.
Yeah. You promise. Yeah.
I heard about it.
At a bar. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, for sure, it's not inconceivable to imagine that, when things are heavy, you can't concentrate on other things. Not much differently than hungry kids don't do well at school.
Right.
If all I can think about is my empty stomach, then I can't read. I'm not focused on anything else but my starving at the moment. Right. No, so it all makes sense. Yeah.
Well, I would love to see a project like that come through Science DAO. Disrupting classroom textbooks. Will somebody come in and make it happen? I don't know, man. I can't. If I could, I would. I'd be like, here's this, here's that, here's this. But I can't, I can't just I can encourage some people. It could just be one subject. It could be one subject. After this, we should have a VC this evening and propose that to the DAO and try to find a team lead or some people to go out and seek out a team lead. And we should build out a textbook app. We have the man inside the DAO. What people don't realize, we have the graphics people, right? We have the writers, we have the software devs, we have everything that you need to do almost anything,
Well, let me tell you, when I left 2016, when I left the professoriate, it was out. There was a digital platform that you could use a tablet, you could use your smartphone. They would read the book to you if you didn't want to actually read it. It was like a audio player, multiple choice exams, and they were experimenting. This was oh gosh, what was the bookmaker that had the app? Pearson. Pearson, yeah. So there's stuff out there. My point is only that there is a model. I mean, it's not as innovative. Like, that's not the innovation. There has to be another piece. Maybe the piece is just a disruption of kind of stopping the continuation of the dominance of a company like Pearson, for instance. Maybe it is, like you said, introducing those additional perspectives that you're not getting from a company like Pearson. Not to throw Pearson under the bus, but they're the one I'm most familiar with regard to this platform. But the technology exists, and the idea is out there, is my point, which, it's not a bad thing. That just means what you're saying has already been proven. Someone else also agreed that we need additional platforms, which means you're on the right path. Just don't know what would be the kind of value add, except for those perspectives, those additional perspectives.
Yeah, I mean, for instance, we had Martin, Professor Schmall, right? Come in and do an AMA for the people. So you have a Oxford professor, coming and giving like a small lecture to the Science DAO about finance, right? Investment perspective. You have, just the other day, we had Mars rover scientists giving perspectives about climate change and viewing the Earth from above. You know, like imagine collaborating right with Planet and having like a climate change curriculum, right? Because I think many do. They have environmental curriculums in school, and here now you have, you know, you have image data and perspective from people that are looking at the Earth from above every single day, like what's happening. And so based on the changing information, the curriculum each year could be updating, right? It's not written down in a textbook and taught like the same stuff every year. Like this is what's happening to the polar ice caps. You know, it can be like in real time, right?
Yeah.
Like and see the cause and effect of certain things because they're viewing from above, right? So on and so forth. So there is, like, depending on networks and what everybody's up to and what they want to do, there is advantages. Yeah.
Well, you happen to help us segue to the last thing that I wanted to talk about with regard to recent updates with the Science DAO, and that is something that I found you to be absolutely enamored with, and that was this idea of this imaging. I mean, you were really into this conversation a week ago. We were talking about the satellites.
Oh,
so let's pick it up. Hold on.
Dr. Tanya, who I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but worked on the Mars rover project.
Yeah, a few different Mars rovers.
Super cool. So right now, currently, a lot of the projects that we have been looking at, or mainly our main focus thus far, has been in, you know, biopharma, biotech. We do have several people in the DAO advisory committee wise that are more mechanically inclined and are more interested in mechanical inventions and projects overall. And so we hope to have like a really well-rounded board here moving into the future where, you know, biotech, pharma is not the only thing, you know, or not the only potential investments that the DAO is like looking into, right? So really cool that we're kind of expanding outwards a bit.
So that conversation went on for some time with you asking questions like what can be seen from what distance. And the good thing about that is what I've noticed is that there's some implementation happening. You want to talk about maybe a result of that conversation and what's happening now?
Oh yeah. Mike from the DAO, huge, like outstanding, like so valuable. You know, I don't know many people more active than Mike. I mean, it's people like Mike that really make the communities really special, right? But he's the type to be fascinated by the journey and the small activity. You know, that's one thing. Like Mike is able to see the magic in being able to complete the day-to-day, you know, that a lot of people lose touch with. You know, they're so focused on the future or the past, whatever it might be, but like taking the steps. So anyway, thank you, Mike. He has sourced a piece of land and he is tilling a Science DAO logo on like 5 acres that will be able to be like clearly imaged from outer space. And then I think he's going to plant lavender so that we can see the changing color. I believe the images are in color. Yeah, I think. So we can see the changing color over time, and so that the lavender can match the Science DAO logo.
Yeah.
Color.
That's really cool, right?
Yeah. And so pretty exciting. Lot of work, but also potentially pretty fun. And Mike is going to be able to say, you know, I made something from my hands that could be seen from outer space.
Yep. Yeah.
That's that's super cool. Not many people grow up and think about like, I'm going to do that, and we're going to be able to see her from outer space. You know, I know it seems basic. It seems like oh, let's just, but it's cool. you know? Cool. Yeah.
You know, kind of full circle. There's lots of benefits, and some of them, you know, everything doesn't have to boil down to rate of return and some of those things. Some of them are just social, and there's some fun in science and in these communities. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else for the people before we sign off?
No, not really. Just thanks for listening. I hope this one we're able to post and share, and I hope that it clears up, a few questions or interest, maybe where it's all in one place. So thank you, Ken, because that's like the goal. Sometimes you go on the VCs, you go on the wherever, and it's like you just go and you go and you go and you talk about things, and people like that. What I really like about what we're doing here is a lot of the information is just boom, it's just right in one place. You just say like, oh, go watch that episode. Right?
Yeah, that's the goal. And that being the case, guys, girls, folks, if you have any suggestions, things you want to talk about, things that we can do to improve the show, please leave them in the comments. We will implement them to the extent to which they make sense to do so. So please let us know what you like, what you don't like, and how we can improve. And we look forward to talking to you soon. Take care.